Welcome to A1R Psychic Radio here on Moonstruck TV with Amanda Hall Psychic all the way from the Gold Coast. What an amazing weekend it's been around the world. We've celebrated yet again another Easter, and I know the children sort of all overloaded on chocolates and sweets and had a great time and probably couldn't sleep with the anticipation of the Easter Bunny coming. But for us mere adults, it was a different sort of time. It's a time of, yes, getting together with family and loved ones and sharing stories and sharing a meal and having a good time. But hopefully that you found some peace during this too, that you found that the quality time that you were spending with family and friends was really valuable and you really enjoyed it and sort of blocked the world events out just even for a little while and just sort of looked at the things that were important. And the things that are important is the get-togethers with the people that are special to us. It's not about how much money you have or don't have or how much you can afford to buy a lavish gift. It's the time. It's the time that we invest. It's the time that we give to other people, which is the most important gift of all, is sharing of ourselves and really listening to what they've got to say and participating in conversations. And I know as we get older, we tend to sort of look back at the things that, when I was young, things were this way and things were so much easier. And they probably were in our version of the truth. And, the up and coming generation will say that in time to come as well. But I do believe that we need to share some of those family stories of people that maybe have passed on or people that are getting elderly now, that we need to recapture that history, that family history, so that it can be passed on down through the ages. So as the younger generations come through, they can understand that there is some sort of connection to great auntie or grandpa or grandma or something like that, that when people say, oh, you've got grandma's eyes, they know exactly what you're talking about because it's something that's not sort of hidden, it's something that's shared. So that's my little soapbox for today. So this week, the Simply Tarot card of the week is the student card. It's the Page of Pentacles. It's the young woman up to the age of 25. Now, for those that regularly watch the show, you'll know that I always say that pages and knights are people up to the age of 25. Now, look, no matter how old our children become, they can be in their 50s, they will still come out in a reading as a page or a knight because to us, they're still our children. They're still younger than us. So that's the reasons why I make it up to the age of 25. So the pages are young women, the knights are young men. I've never seen too many blokes running around in a dress. And I know a lot of tarot people believe that the pages are male. I don't agree with that because they have dresses on all of them. So, and I like to tend to think of the young men being the knights. They're usually charging off into battle or doing something constructive, which is what boys like to do, is to take control of a situation. And I'm not saying women are weak. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that in the tarot, they're playing a more softer sort of role. They're sort of teaching us things. So it's a young woman to the age of 25. It's somebody that's a student, male or female. Now, look, we're all students. We're all continuing to learn throughout our life. Doesn't necessarily mean you're picking up the books or your laptop and going back to school. It means that you're the student of life. There's things to be learnt. There's things to be uncovered. There's things that you may need to approach in a different way in the coming week. Look at it through a different set of eyes. Try and look at it through a different lens, and then maybe you'll get the answers to the things that have been troubling you, that have been sitting around you for a little while now. So it's the young woman to the age of 25, student, male or female, the Page of Pentacles. Now we're going to move on to the astrology section. Now this week we sort of still have a very big emphasis on the Aries sector of the chart. Happy birthday to all the Aries. I have lots of Aries friends and they've all been madly celebrating and whatever, and sort of saying, well, we've managed to get through another year, and that's amazing. But for us mere mortals, the rest of us signs, it's a time when it's the beginning of the astrological year. Aries is the beginning. It's the beginning of the astrological year for everyone. So it's good to see that the sun is still sitting in Aries, and the sun in Aries is making all of us, no matter what your star sign, get up off the couch, do something constructive, look at your life in a different sort of lens, sort of saying, what can I do now? What new things can I bring in? Or what needs a little bit more of a push, a little bit more energy than what I've been giving it? So it's a time when you might feel a little bit restless. You might sort of feel as if you can't sort of settle on anything, that you're darting and jumping from one situation to another. Bear in mind, while you're doing that, you're probably giving it enough attention, even if it is only for a few minutes or half an hour or whatever, before you move on to the next thing, that you're giving it that all 100% focus for that period of time. And that's important. So progress is being made. It might seem as if you're a bit flippity floppity around the place, but that's okay. That's what the energy is about, is moving very quickly. It's not about sitting there and focusing and concentrating for too long. It's get in, get out, and move on to the next project that you need to be looking at, or the next situation that needs your attention. So we have Neptune, the planet of illusion, delusion, and creativity, holding hands or conjunct Saturn, which is the planet of discipline. It's like the father figure. It's the one that comes along with the sensible hat on and says, now, hang on a minute. Have you looked at everything very squarely? Have you looked at it from every angle? They're both sitting in Aries at the moment. So it's an interesting combination, because Neptune's coming along and saying, oh, yeah, well, okay, we can sort of amble along. We can go down the tunnel. We can walk through the fog. Really, nothing's terribly urgent at the moment. We can sort of, look at it for some creative solutions to the things that are going on in our lives. But Saturn comes along and says, now, hang on a minute. We need to put some structure here. We need to put a good solid foundation. It's okay to have daydreams. It's okay to want to wander around in a bit of a fog and not make a decision just yet. But let's put some structure in place. Let's put some boundaries there. Let's put something that we're aiming towards. And by doing that and using the Aries energy, where we've got an abundance of energy that we can sort of start projects really, really quickly, get other people motivated and on board, and then we can take off and sort of allow other people to do the menial tasks or the follow-up stuff or the slower start part of the project behind. So it's a good time, particularly if you're a fire sign, to get projects off the ground, to sort of get your voice heard, to get people to sort of understand that the things that you're trying to bring in or the changes that you're trying to do are not just flash in the pan. They are thought about, they've come from a creative space, but there's also the structure and the discipline there to follow it through. So when we're talking about the fire signs, we're talking about Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius, and the opposite sign of Libra. But this energy is washing over the remaining 8 signs as well. We've already spoken about Aries and the sun being in Aries, and happy birthday to all the Aries. But Chiron, the planet, is not actually a planet. It's one of the Arabian parts, and it's known as the wounded healer. Now, where you find Chiron in a chart is where we find that we need to heal ourselves. Now, this is a collective healing at the moment that's going on. Chiron has been sitting in Aries now for quite some time. So, yes, Chiron's general energy here is going to be directed at the fire signs, but it's washing over the other remaining 8 signs too. But it's particularly saying for the fire signs, dig deep into your soul, listen to your body, listen to your emotions, listen to everything that's going on around you, and then make your decisions or your choices or your changes in your life. You have the ability to heal your body, mind, and soul at the moment if you really listen and take notice of what is going on, not just wishful thinking, oh, I got out of bed and I had a toe ache. Well, I'll dismiss that. But no, why do you have the toe ache? You've got the toe ache because you kicked it. So therefore, we've got to stay off your foot and let it heal. For other people, it might be longer term, lingering, sort of more chronic type of illnesses, things that they've put up with for a very long time. Maybe it's time to go back and revisit, any medications or procedures or, suggested courses of action of how to manage or, beat the condition or, make your life better. Sometimes I think we just get so bogged down in doing the same thing over and over and over again that we don't actually revisit it. We don't actually look at it. We don't go back and talk to our medical team about it and say, hang on a minute, I've been on these meds for so many years and I really don't feel that there's any great progress. Is there anything new to the market? Is there another way of approaching this? This is the time to do that, particularly if you're a fire sign. Now, I want to talk about Pluto. I don't often talk about Pluto because Pluto's just moved into Aquarius and he's going to be here for a very, very long time, 20 odd years. So it's going to become a little bit monotonous if I speak about Pluto every week. But Pluto is in Aquarius and he's asking people to sort of think outside the square. Now, even though it's affecting air signs, which is Aquarius, Gemini, and Libra, it is also affecting the opposite sign of Leo. Now, I've had a lot of communication with people around the world this week, and a lot of Leos are particularly feeling the effects of the opposition from Pluto to their sign at the moment, where Pluto is sort of like a push-pull situation, asking them to sort of get off the couch, transform your life, start to think outside the square, start to look at things differently. But because they're both fixed and rigid sort of signs, they sort of can get bogged down in this is the only way something can be done. They don't always look or try and think outside the square to look for new potential ways of resolving a situation. Now, Pluto here is asking for you to look for something different. It's not necessarily saying go in a, in a bombastic, bossy sort of manner, but look at it sort of in a more subtle sort of way. What can I do? How can I think this through? How can I look at it through a logical set of eyes, and then maybe come to a negotiation or come to the table in a calmer sort of fashion, instead of being a bombastic sort of coming in and sort of dictating what's going to happen and what's not going to happen, that, you need to have a more gentle approach. Now, it's interesting how it is affecting Leo so much, a little bit more so than actually Aquarians at the moment. The Aquarians are sort of seem to be sort of embracing the changes, embracing the energy, sort of sitting back and sort of doing a little bit of thinking, not necessarily doing a lot of acting at the moment. They're not, they're not pursuing things at the moment. They're sort of taking it very gently. And this is really interesting because most Aquarians don't like to be told anything, or don't like to be pushed or cajoled into making changes unless they decide to do it, because after all, they know everything and they don't need anybody's help and they don't need anybody's input. So it's interesting to see them sort of taking a much more laid back approach and sort of almost absorbing the energy, or working with the energy, and sort of saying, well, yeah, okay, I can see that and I can see this. I don't really need to act at the moment. Let's just sort of sit back here and get some popcorn and watch the world go by and see who's going to do what and how things sort of are going to unfold. So it's a very, very interesting way that they're particularly approaching it. That is washing over the other remaining air signs as well. Maybe not quite as intense, but the intensity that I've seen in this last week to 10 days is coming more from the opposite sign, which is Leo, which I spoke about, where they're sort of really uncomfortable, and a lot of them are sort of not really thinking anything through. It's sort of an idea pops in the head, bang, let's do that, and they don't think about the consequences, or think about how it's going to affect them long term or longer term, or how it's going to affect people that are important in their lives. So just be aware, if you're around Leos, they could be a little tiny bit out of control. They need to be sort of reined in a little bit, and that's really important for not just for you, but for their own benefit too. That, if they've given it a lot of thought and they've looked at everything, fine, go ahead, pursue it. But don't do something on the spur of the moment just because you're feeling uncomfortable and you want to make change for the sake of change. We have Uranus, the planet of the unusual and unexpected, is still in Taurus. It's going to be there until the 26th of this month. Then he will move signs, and he'll move out of there where he's been for 7 and a bit years into Gemini. So please be aware, if you're an earth sign, which is Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, the opposite sign of Scorpio, that Uranus is doing his last little final dance. So it may not necessarily seem easy. For those people that have worked through the energies of Uranus in the last 7 years, things will get a lot easier now. There might be a couple of little breakthroughs that happen out of nowhere and you think, wow, that's just tidied that up. That's great. But for those of you that have ignored or chosen not to listen to the lessons, or avoided them, or put them off, or whatever, Uranus will now come in and he will make the changes that are necessary between now and the 26th of this month. They may not be pleasant, because you've had every opportunity to move with the times, to make the changes that he's been poking at you to sort of say, make a change. But if you don't do it willingly, then it might not necessarily seem the way that you would have liked to have seen a change to happen, but know that it will end up being for your own good. Now we have the moon, the emotional planet, is sitting in Sagittarius. And the reason why I brought that in, the moon moves every 2.5 days. So he moves very quickly, but I thought, let's just lighten the mood a little bit. With the moon in Sag, everybody's sort of feeling a little bit more positive, a little bit more out there, ready to sort of party a little bit, have a bit of fun, not take anything too seriously on an emotional level. And with so much else going on astrologically, I thought we needed to lighten the mood a little bit. Finally, we're going to talk about where Mercury is. Now, Mercury is the planet of communication. This is always really important to know where Mercury is transiting around the zodiac at the moment. It's in Pisces. Now, to me, that's a good place to have Mercury at the moment, because it means for everything and all the chaos and everything that's going on around the world, and what I spoke about with what's happening with Pluto and the Leos of the world, with Mercury in Pisces here, maybe, just maybe, there might be a little bit of sanity that might just sort of kick in, that we sort of calm things back, we dial things back, we sort of take a little bit of a breath, be very careful and more articulate in how we communicate, and sort of maybe have a little bit of a softly, softly, gently, gently approach rather than being bombastic and, charging in. Maybe we could look at it in a more gentle sort of way. So, yes, this is definitely affecting the water signs, which is Pisces, Cancer, and Scorpio, and the opposite sign of Virgo, but it is washing over the remaining 8 signs. So it's sort of like, think about your communication before you open your mouth. You don't always have to talk about everything that comes into your mind. You can filter it and sort of put it in a nice little package that people is much more palatable, and you'll get a better response, and you'll get people engaging better if you come in with a little bit more of a gentle approach. We're going to talk with Kim in Toronto and Ontario in Canada. Are you there, Kim?
Yes, yes.
Hi, Kim.
Hi. How are you? Sorry about that. I'm just muting my TV.
That's all right, Kim. Do you have a question I can answer for you, sweetie?
Yeah, actually, I do. So I'm just actually asking about love. Like, will I meet somebody who is like serious and wants like an actual relationship? There's somebody around me
Mhm.
now
In the
who
future.
isn't serious, and I'm seeing all of that, and what I'm wanting is different. So I want to know if I'll be able to meet someone. I guess this year I'm doing a lot of the inner work on myself, and in general, life
Mhm.
goals that I've set for myself. So I would just want to know if I'll meet someone soon who's like
Mhm.
a breath of fresh air and something different.
Okay, Kim. Well, it's good that you're working on yourself. I mean, that's always a positive when you sort of really sit down and put yourself under
Yes.
the microscope and see what needs improving or modifying, or things that we can let go of and things that we've outgrown. Because that's the interesting
Yes.
part about being human, isn't it? I mean, we have different needs at different times in our lives, and different things that are really super important at a certain stage in our life. And a few years down the track, we think, oh, was that so important? But it was at the time, because it gets us to where we need to be going now. The first thing I want to
Yes.
say to
Yes.
you is, I want you to forget about who said what or who did what in previous relationships. You've been there, you've done that, you've dealt with it, you've really overanalyzed who did what and who
Yes.
was responsible for what. We no need to revisit that now. Most people don't do enough soul searching, and you've taken it to the opposite extreme, where you've taken it to so much that there's nothing left to soul search, and that's a good place to be, because it means that you've been
Hmm.
bluntly honest, not just with yourself, but with
Hmm.
previous relationships, and taken out of it the things that you want or would like in a future
Hmm.
relationship. And you're also very aware of what you don't want and what doesn't suit
Yes.
you and what doesn't suit the new Kim that we've been working on. So
Hmm.
they're very, very positives. It's interesting because I do feel that there's romance coming, and I think there's going to be a couple of
Hmm.
possibilities here. And it's like, I want to say to you, it's that age old adage, you got to go out and kiss enough frogs before you get the prince. Well, that can be
Hmm.
applied here with you too. I don't want you to sort of say no to a date just because they mightn't look right, or wasn't what you imagined in your mind's eye. Some people have a preference. Oh, I don't like men with dark hair, and a blonde one comes, oh no, won't go out with him because he's
Hmm.
got the wrong color hair.
Hmm.
Don't look at it in that very superficial way. I want you to go out. You only have to go on a date with them. You don't have to marry them. If it
Hmm.
doesn't work out or it's not what you want, then you can sort of, it's like reaffirming to yourself, okay, well, he was nice to this point, but I didn't like this, this, and this. And it's like fine tuning the
Hmm.
recipe that we've got for the relationship. So that's why it's important. I feel as early as June, the first man's going to come into your life that is going to have some sort of significance, but I don't feel he's the right
Okay.
one. It's like you'll go on 3 or 4 dates and then you think, yeah, maybe I could maybe make it right. No, no, no. Where there's no maybes, it's either got to be yes or no. So that's sort of like
Yeah.
the psychic test, if you want to put it that way. The universe is testing you to see whether you're going to fall back into old habit patterns of making do, or I can fix it, or those
Yeah.
sort of things that you did in the past, because you were great at rescuing. No need to rescue anybody
Yeah.
now. They're all, if
Yes.
they can't
Yes.
come rescued, we don't want them. And that's not being
Yes.
rude, that's being practical about where you're
Yes.
at in your life. So there's another one coming in about 6 or 8 weeks later after that, which I feel is the perfect one. Is somebody that comes in, and he
Mm.
may not, as I said, look the part. If you've got a preference for hair or eye colouring, he mightn't have that quite perfect, but it's like the
Mm-hmm.
whole package is there. I've got a very tall man, mid
Mm,
brown hair, green to hazily coloured eyes. He can be soft spoken. Don't let that fool you that he's not strong, because he's actually very super
mm,
strong underneath all that. He's just got a gentle approach to the world. He doesn't need to yell and scream to get his point across. He can do that in a very quiet sort of way, and people take notice of him.
mm-hmm.
He is over 6 foot. I look, he's not what I'd call the most outstanding looking of men. I mean, he's not a pretty boy, but he's certainly not ugly.
Uh,
Like there's a interest into his face. You look into those eyes and they're incredibly
uh,
powerful. A lot of people would find them very uncomfortable eyes because he has such a strong gaze that you think, oh, gee, I've got to turn
yeah.
away from my eyes a bit. It's so powerful.
Oh,
I
okay.
like that. I'm a big eye person. If somebody can look me straight in the eye and has
Mm,
that really strong gaze, that's the mirror to the soul to
yes.
me. And I like that
Yes.
about him. He doesn't talk a lot about himself when you first start dating. It's a little bit like pulling teeth. You've got to sort of ask the
Mm,
questions and he'll answer them, but he doesn't volunteer it. I'm not against that
mm,
because at least he's not sitting there giving you the blow by blow history of every relationship and every kiss he ever had.
yeah.
We don't need to do that. What happened before is in the past. Like yes, you need the
Yes.
headline package, but you don't need all the gory details. He has a
Yes.
good job. I'm going to say to you, he's been on his own for a couple of years. He doesn't talk about it much, but the previous relationship was serious. I'm not sure whether there was a wedding ring involved. I see a ring, but wasn't sure whether it was a wedding ring, but it was certainly a serious connection. And there was a lot
Mm,
for him to process and work through when that fell apart. So he's done that and
mm,
that's good. I feel really comfortable. I think it's going to be a fast moving relationship, but you'll look at it and you say, has it only been 3 months? We've covered so much ground in that time. It's like we've been dating for a couple of years. So I don't think there needs to be numbers on a piece of paper at when's the appropriate time for the two of you to decide, you're going to be each other's besties for life. If you do that in 4 months, so be it. What's the timetable? Why does there have to be a timetable if you both know it's right?
yes. Got it. Yeah. Got it. Got
Because
it.
I think he's ready. He's ready to settle down. He's ready to find his life partner and build a life together and things like that. And that's a good thing. So, and that's exactly where you're at and you're ready for that too. So that's where I've got to leave it, sweetie. But, it's a really beautiful relationship. So just be ready. Just go about your business and the universe will take care of it for you.
Okay. And would he work in a similar field that I'm moving into?
Yes, he does. He does work in a similar field or has a great understanding of it. Like work's not going to be an issue between the two of you.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Lovely to speak with you. I've got to move on to the next caller now. We're going to talk with Leslie in West Palm Beach in Florida. Are you there, Leslie?
Yes, I am.
Do you have a question I can answer for you, Leslie?
What can you tell me about my relationship?
Okay. Can I have the person's first initial, please, sweetie?
G.
G. Okay. Really, really interesting. Has there been some changes going on in the relationship over the last couple of months? Like, some tricky areas there that the two of you have had to navigate through?
No, not really. Just more of like time limitations together.
Yeah, but they would be limitations to me or restrictions, things that we have to work through. Like everything
Yeah.
hasn't been what I would call smooth sailing. It's sort of like, I'm pleased to say that that's sort of starting to disappear now. Things are going to start to sort of open up a lot more and things are going to flow more in the relationship. I just feel that they're not as committed as you are at this point. I'm not saying that they don't want the relationship. I want to be very clear, but I think you're more in the headspace of what's next. They're not quite there yet.
Hmm.
So you've got to wait for them to
Okay.
catch up. It's nothing wrong. It's just, we all move at a different pace. You're ready to sort of look at what's next. We're going to settle down and we're going to do this, we're going to do that. They haven't quite caught up yet. And I think they won't yet until probably the later half of this year, from about August onwards. Are they looking to make some changes with their job? Because the work thing seems to keep coming into their mind as, sort of like,
Yes.
not so much daydreaming, but looking at it and sort of trying to work out what to do next and how to go about it. And that's the number one thing in their life at the moment. And I think until they get that part sorted, then they can't look at what comes next in the relationship. You know what I mean? Like, this is too important.
Yes.
They've got to get this
Mhm.
sorted for themselves. Look, I do feel
Yes.
that there will be a job change, but I feel with the job change, there will be some study or some learning as well, but it's not mandatory with the job change. It's sort of like they move into a new role and then it's like, oh, wow, I might go and do this and that will enhance my opportunity for promotion further down the track. So it's something that they're
Correct.
willingly doing on their own, and that's a good thing. So I feel, strongly towards, the second half of this year from about August, September onwards, things are certainly heading in the right direction where you can start to see a future, unfolding. And, G is talking more about when we do this and when we do that. I wouldn't be at all surprised towards the end of this year or the early part of next year, the two of you sitting down and talking about the potential of buying a property together. You may not do it straight away, but we're sort of heading towards that. We're talking about that. We're looking at things. We're looking at our finances. So they're all positive steps to me as this is becoming a really serious union, which is what you're hoping for.
Yes.
Yeah. So don't rule anything out. Look, if he seems a bit vague, then just go with it. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes when we're in our own head and we're trying to sort things out, we're not paying attention to our partner like we should do. We're sort of preoccupied. And G has a tendency to do that and only be able to deal with one or two things at a time, and the rest of it becomes overwhelming. So you're going to have to be the stronger one of the two in the relationship at times like that. So, you're
Okay.
capable of doing that. That's not a problem to you. You can lead.
Sure.
Yeah.
I've
But,
waited this
but
long.
yeah, but know that it's a balanced partnership. Do you know what I mean? You might do the leading and then G comes along and does the finishing off, and that's okay. It's whatever works for you guys is the important thing. But I know this is heading in the right direction, so please be patient. Things will happen. And maybe not as quickly as you'd like to see them, but they are certainly heading in the right direction. So G needs to change his job, and that's the start of the things unfolding in the direction that you would like, Leslie. So that's where we're going to have to leave Leslie now. We've come to the end of the show. It's always interesting to talk with people about their relationships and things that they're hoping to bring in. And, love is probably the most important question I get asked from clients. If I looked at a week, that would be the number one thing, followed by money. And at the moment, world events seem to be taking centre stage a little bit too. But, we all need to be able to sort of look at what's going on in our lives and to understand what's going on. And sometimes I think we need to just take a breath. And each week I finish the show with a song that I feel is appropriate for the time, or something that's driven me nuts during the week or whatever. This week I felt this song was very, very appropriate because at the moment there's so much destruction and negativity and wars going on, and everybody's sort of, like, oh, gee, can we just switch that off for a little while? I just want to focus on something nice in my life at the moment. I don't want to know who's going to do what or who said this or whatever. It's just sort of like, let's just take a breath. We've had Easter, we've had some fun times, and now what the world needs is love. With the one and only Dionne Warwick. I mean, I think she's an amazing singer and she does a beautiful rendition of this song, and it was a song that I think was just perfectly written for her. So what the world needs now is love, sweet love with Dionne Warwick. Until next week, bye for now.